Welcome. My name is Claire Culwell, and I am so excited that you are joining me today for my podcast called To Be Bold. When I thought about having a podcast, I thought about the ways that I had to step out of my comfort zone for things that matter throughout my life. My birth mother motivated me to step out of my comfort zone when she shared with me that I had survived her abortion that successfully took the life of my twin. And I knew that day that I never wanted to see the tears that I saw in her eyes, in the eyes of anyone else. And so I chose to boldly step out of my comfort zone for something that mattered to me. And so I want to be able to share stories with you, stories of people, ordinary people just like me, people just like you, who are really doing that, who are stepping out of their comfort zone for things that matter, who are being bold in their stance for things that are good, who are speaking truth in love. And I want that to be an encouragement to you today. I hope that it will motivate you as you live life in your family, in your community. And I hope that it will motivate you to be bold enough to stand up, to step out of your comfort zone for things that truly matter today. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to my first episode of my new podcast called To Be Bold. I am so excited that you are joining me today. Thank you. This is so much fun. I guess we will learn together since I haven't recorded an episode yet, but I am excited to be able to share a little bit about me and my story during this first episode. And then after this, all of the episodes in the future, I will have an incredible guest joining us so that they can share their story of how they are being called to be bold, how they are stepping out of their comfort zone for things that matter in their life, in their community. And I don't think it can get any more exciting than that. I know for me, I feel so motivated when I hear someone's personal story and I hear how God is using them, and especially when I hear how God has taken them completely out of their comfort zone to be bold, to speak truth, to gain knowledge, to be used by Him in their community, in their family, in their day-to-day life. And so I get excited. And so I hope that these stories that are shared from here on out, that they will encourage you just as much as they will encourage me as we hear these stories together. So you can expect that I will release maybe once a week a new episode, and it will be incredible. I know that my platform has been on the life issue, but I definitely plan to have people from all different walks of life who are being used for good, who are stepping out of their comfort zone when things matter. And so a few different examples of people that I will have on are my good friend Carol Dodds, who works for Campus Crusade for Christ, and her husband was offered this incredible opportunity with the NFL, but they chose to follow God's calling on their life and begin to share the gospel with students on college campuses. And so he turned down that opportunity with the NFL and followed God's calling on his life. Talk about being bold. Another example is my sweet friend Christina Bennett, who is an African-American pro-life conservative. I am so excited for you to hear her story and how God has brought her on this journey to be bold, to break away maybe from the norm of what is expected of her as an African-American person, as a woman. And so it's been incredibly neat to be able to follow her, to be friends with her, and to get to see the ways that she is stepping out boldly for things that matter. And so there are so many others. I am so excited for you to be able to just experience this journey with me and get to hear these incredible stories. But for this first episode, I just wanted to share a little bit more about me and my story and just the journey that God has taken me on the past 11 years. So 11 years ago, I know that most of you know my story, but 11 years ago, I met my birth mother. And it was this incredible reunion. I was so excited to meet her, but she dropped a bomb on me. She told me something that I could never have imagined would be my story. She told me something that changed my life forever. And there was no turning back. She told me that I had survived her D&E dismemberment abortion that successfully aborted my twin. And I remember as she shared this with me and just sitting across, we were actually in her home sitting on this bed in her home, and we were, sorry, excuse me, I'm out of my comfort zone right now with my clothes. So we were sitting on this bed, and I remember just looking at her, and I was hearing these words come out of her mouth, and it was like not fathomable to me. I mean, I had never heard of anyone surviving an abortion. I had never thought much about the abortion issue. I had never seen what abortion did to a woman because I had not personally known anyone who had experienced abortion. At least nobody had told me in my life that they had experienced an abortion. And so when I sat across from my birth mother, I remember hearing these words, and I remember hearing that I had survived her abortion and that I had been a twin and all these details. She was 13 years old, so many things that stood out. But the loudest thing in the room that day was my birth mother's tears. And I can still see it. I can see the look in her face. I can see her trembling and shaking and just feeling so remorseful. I know that she told me that day that she fully expected me to just get up and walk out of her home and never talk to her again. I mean, that was a genuine fear that she had as she shared this story with me. And so I remember all these things, and I remember her tears, and I remember how it affected me. And I remember knowing in that moment, like, okay, this is not just a coincidence. Like, this is not just an accident that she's sharing this story with me. There is a purpose to this. And I knew just based on big picture of my life that God was good. And that he had given me this story for something good to come out of it. But I had a hard time grasping, like, okay, what is that? And how are you going to use this? But not only that, how are you going to use me, God? And so I remember thinking, I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what you're asking of me right now, but I know that it is going to be huge, and I know that it is going to be life-changing for me. And so I would discover over the next few weeks and months that God was calling me to step out of my comfort zone, to be bold in my pursuit of truth, in speaking up for women like my birth mother, for women like me, and really just realizing that, okay, big picture is I thought I had it figured out. Like, I thought I had this purpose for my life, this plan for my life, but my birth mother dropped this bomb on my life. I mean, completely upended everything that I thought I had figured out. And I was now in a position where I was being called to step out of my comfort zone for something that mattered to me. And so I chose to dive in, and it's crazy. I am 100% an introvert. You can ask my parents, my friends. I'm sure when I have my friend Carol Dodds on, you'll hear, just from her, that growing up, I was not someone that liked conflict. I was not someone that wanted to get in a debate or be on a stage or have any sort of spotlight on me. I wanted to be the person in the corner that nobody noticed, that had conversations one-on-one. Definitely not someone sharing life experiences, advice, anything like that on a larger scale. And so this was crazy. God was taking me to places that I never dreamed I would go. He was calling me out of my comfort zone in ways that I could have never imagined. But looking back now, it was all part of the bigger picture. You see, God has used me in my life. He has used me in ways that I could have never imagined when I allow Him to push me outside of my comfort zone. And that is when He gets the glory. That is when He really works, because it is Him working through me. It is Him speaking through me rather than me relying on my own strengths. And so faith has obviously been a very big part of this journey for me, because I have had to rely 100% on God as He takes me out of my comfort zone. I wanted to share, just a few examples of that. I guess not even a year, maybe 8 months. I met my birth mother in March, and I believe I spoke for the first time in December of that year. And so, about 9 months was the first time, after meeting my birth mother, was the first time that I actually shared my story on a stage. And a lot of these things will be shared. I'm so excited for y'all to be able to read my new book that is coming out in April. It's called Survivor. It will be on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, at Target, all the major distributors. But I'm excited for y'all to read some more of these types of stories. But the first time that I spoke on a stage, gosh, I was 21. I was living in College Station, Texas. I know that so many of us are familiar with that, because that is where Abby Johnson ran the abortion clinic there before she left her job. And so I spoke at an event with Abby. She was another one of the speakers that December, the December of her leaving her, right after she left her job at Planned Parenthood. And she and I had become really great friends. I won't share too much, because you'll have to read the book to hear more about just our friendship and how all of that came to be. But I was speaking at this event, and it was a youth event at a Catholic church there. And you would think that, not that big of a deal. I mean, kids that were, 10 to 18, and there was maybe a couple hundred of them there. And so not too big of a crowd, not too intimidating of an audience, but I was so afraid. And I remember walking up to this, it wasn't a podium, but it was just this little chair that I would sit on, because I knew from speech class in high school that if I stood up, everybody would be able to hear my heels clanking on the floor because I was shaking. And so I asked him if I could sit down to kind of, maybe fake him out that I wasn't as afraid as I was. But I got up there, and I basically read it. I mean, I had these notes, and I had practiced, but by the time I got up there, I had no clue what I was even supposed to say, because I was so afraid. And so I basically read my notes. But what I will tell you is that as in between sentences, as I would look up from my paper this first time I had ever shared my story ever, I looked into the faces of people, of children, whose lives were being changed by the impact of my story, of my survival. And that changed me. You talk about, my birth mother had just shared this story of surviving an abortion, and then here I am, 100% out of my comfort zone, not doing the best job of sharing my story. Definitely pretty rocky, definitely I had a lot of work to do as I was starting this journey of sharing my story, but the words, the story itself, it stood alone. It spoke for itself. And I watched as light bulbs went off in these kids' heads. And they connected the dots of, okay, abortion takes a human life. Okay, Claire survived an abortion. So when we look at her, we're looking at the face of the unborn baby. And that's why we care. We care because abortion ends a human life. And so I watched as these light bulbs went off in these kids' heads, and I realized that the greatest use of my life, the greatest use of my story, of what had actually happened to me, of what had happened to my birth mother, of what had happened to hundreds of thousands of women across this country who share a similar story, that the greatest use of telling that story, of stepping out of my comfort zone, was allowing God to speak through me and to use my story to open hearts and minds and open eyes to the truth. And I realized that it wasn't me. It wasn't me and who I am and my gifts and my talents and all these things that I was already equipped with. No. What was changing lives was this story that God had written on my life. And my willingness, my obedience to step out and say, you know what, I'm scared. These aren't my natural talents. This isn't necessarily what I thought I would be doing, but that's okay because God, this is how you use me best. When I 100% step out of my comfort zone for something that matters. And when I 100% rely on Him to do it. So that's one example of just how I've seen God over the years really use me as I say yes. Okay, God, I will step out of my comfort zone and I will allow you to use me and I will allow you to share my story across the country so that lives are saved, so that lives are changed. And so I've been doing that for the past 11 years. I have very rarely have I turned down a speaking opportunity because I know what my story can do, how it can change the heart of someone who doesn't know how they feel on that issue. So I've been sharing, and then something happened. Last year in November, I got a call. And I was about to go share my story in Nashville. I was about to go speak. And I thought, okay, it's going to go the same way that every single other speaking engagement has gone. I know what is effective. I know what I can say that will really resonate with people. And so I had this idea in my head of how this evening would go. But then I get a call. I got a call 2 days before I was supposed to go speak. And it was from Hannah, who runs Voices of Choice in Nashville. And they had filmed my birth mother sharing her story for their event. They had sent someone out to where she lives in Oklahoma, and they had filmed her sharing her story so that the audience could get this big picture. I would share her story on stage, but before that, they would show this 5-minute clip of my birth mother sharing her side of our story. And so I was really excited about that. But what she said when she called me, it upset me, and it caused me to question this big picture for a moment. This big picture that I've been talking about, how God, when he pushes me out of my comfort zone, that is when he uses me best. That is when lives are changed. That is when lives are saved. And so I got this call, and Hannah said, Claire, I'm so excited. We are surprising you, and we are flying your birth mother to Nashville to come see you speak. And y'all get to spend 2 days together, and it's going to be incredible. And I swear you could have heard a pin drop. This was at 6 o'clock in the morning, and I was in my closet getting ready to take my kids to school. And I remember standing in the closet, staring at my clothes, figuring out what I was going to wear. And I was literally speechless because I thought, no, this is not it. This is not how this happens. I knew this day would come eventually, but I thought this is going to come on my terms, when I am ready, when I feel prepared, when I feel like I can look her in the eye and share our story and watch her tears and watch her experience all these emotions as I try to be on a stage and live this emotional roller coaster in front of a crowd of hundreds. I thought, there is just no way. This is not happening. And I cried. I called my dad because I knew he was the only person up. My husband had already left for work. And so I called my dad, and he prayed with me. I called one of my best friends, Laura Ruth, and she prayed with me and just reminded me, Claire, this is how it's always gone for you. God always takes you out of your comfort zone, and he is always faithful, and he is always good. And something good, something powerful, something incredible has always and can come out of this new experience, has always come out of every experience that he's walked you through, but can come out of this one too. And she said, just breathe, just pray, and you can say no. She said, but I would really pray about saying yes, because God's shown that he uses you best when he takes you out of your comfort zone. And so I thought, you're right. But I don't like it, but you're right. And so I got in the car, I took my kids to school, I got back home, and by the time I walked through the doors of my house, 45 minutes later, I knew. This was just another way that God would put himself on display. It's another way that he will continue to write our story, that he will continue to bring redemption and healing to mine and my birth mother's relationship, and another way, another story that can be told as I step out of my comfort zone to speak truth and love, to proclaim the story that God has given me. It's just another story that I'll be able to share, that shows that he is good, that shows what can happen when you allow God to take you out of your comfort zone. And so I went to that event, and I won't tell the whole story because I want you to read the words. This is one of the stories that I saved for my book, but I will say that God showed up that day as my birth mother, and I went to this event for the first time together, and for the first time ever, my birth mother heard me tell our story. And I watched as these tears streamed down her face once again, but they weren't the same tears. They weren't the tears that I saw that day as she shared about her abortion with me in that tiny room in her home. These tears were different. These tears were victorious. These tears were tears of overcoming. These tears were tears of redemption and of accepting Christ's forgiveness on her life because she felt free. And so this is just another example of how God has used me best, how he has taken me 100% out of my comfort zone for things that matter. The thing that mattered that day was not whether or not I could get through that moment of sharing my story in front of my birth mother. It was not whether or not people would watch me fall apart on stage as I watched my birth mother do the same. What mattered that day was that my birth mother was able to see as I faithfully did something that felt scary and felt completely out of control and felt completely out of my comfort zone. But I did it anyway. I did it anyway because my birth mother deserved to hear the story that I've told for the past 11 years, that I love her, that I forgive her, that Christ forgives her, and that I will do everything in my power from this day forward to fight for women like her, for children like my twin. And so I don't regret getting up on that stage, even though it felt completely out of control to me that day. This is why I created this podcast. If you have enjoyed just hearing those tiny little snippets of how God has called me personally out of my comfort zone to do his work, to make a difference, to be bold in my stance for truth, I gotta tell you, you are going to love hearing from the guests that I'm going to have on this podcast in the future, and the ways that God is calling them to be bold in their life, the ways that he is calling them to step out of their comfort zone for things that matter. My hope, as I mentioned before, is that it will motivate you. That it will take you on this journey of evaluating your own life, the ways that you yourself are stepping out of your comfort zone for things that matter, and that will encourage you as you in your day-to-day life pursue truth, pursue being bold in your stance for things that truly matter. And that it will encourage you to get out of your comfort zone and do something. So I hope, I want to invite you to join me each week. Follow my podcast, follow my page, Called to be Bold with Claire Culwell. And join me each week as we unravel a new story of how people just like me, people just like you, people of faith, people of conscience, just ordinary men and women and families across this country that are stepping out of their comfort zone for things that matter. I am so looking forward to this journey that we are going to embark on together that is beginning today as we pursue, as we run after truth and things that matter. I can't wait for you to join me next week as I release my first episode of Called to be Bold with an incredible guest. So I hope that I will see you there. Have a great week. God bless you all. Bye-bye.